She is a case planner at the Yukon Shelter, and which is part of the Lookout Emergency Aid Society. And again, just a reminder to all our audience here, if you have any questions for Matt or anybody as we kind of go along here, write them down. And again, during the break, we'll have a chance to put them on that back table in that bag, and we'll try to get to them. Here you go. So, maybe I'd start off with this. How is Yukon, because I've been to shelters and visited shelters around the city, Union Gospel Mission. There's actually quite a few of them, but how is Yukon Shelter different from other non-Lookout shelters, which is the organization you're a part of?
So the Lookout Shelter that I work for, in the Yukon specifically, we are a case planning shelter. So anyone that stays at the shelter is expected to be accountable for their actions and to really be the leader in their life. So you can't come and go as you please. If you break a rule that's made notice to you when you do your intake, then you'll be, held accountable for that action, and there's consequences. So some other shelters, you can come and go, stay a night, or not check in, and not, if you don't follow up with something like applying for income assistance or sending out applications to housing, that's okay, you can come back when you want to. That's not the case at the Yukon Shelter and within some of the shelters at Lookout. If you say you're going to do something, we'll ask you about it when you said you would do it by, and that's really to help people build the life skills about being independent, so that hopefully when you go on to live in your own housing, you know how to do things like laundry, and cooking and cleaning, and which I think is something a lot of us take, for granted, and assume that people know those life skills. A lot of people don't. Yeah.
Okay. And what's your job title?
My job title is case planner, case manager. So it means that I am building these case plans for people that need assistance with any number of things. So if they have a lack or no to little income, I'll help them apply for income assistance or disability, or look for jobs, sending housing applications, referrals to mental health programs, addiction services, any number of things. Yeah.
Well, here in Vancouver, there's a model, especially for people who are struggling with chemical dependency issues, called the harm reduction model. And could you explain a little bit about what that is, and do you guys follow the harm reduction model?
So yeah, we do. Within the Lookout Society, we believe that following a harm reduction model means there's no to little barriers to people being allowed to access our service. So we believe that if we say it's an abstinence-based shelter, then there's not as many people that can access the shelter. And the reality is we need to meet people where they're at. If where they're at is in their addiction and on that continuum of a relapse or within their new addiction, whichever it is, we need to meet them where they're at. And if people aren't met where they're at, then they're not going to get the service they need. So that means we provide clean needles to use illicit drugs, clean crack pipes, and condoms, and the education on how to use those safely. So I personally believe that it's not going to encourage more use. It's going to give that person the tools to use safely, so diseases are not spread and death doesn't occur more likely.
Okay. What are, if you're working with somebody in the shelter, or maybe there's somebody who may know someone who has mental health decline or mental health illness or disorder, what are some of the declining or decamping symptoms of a mental health condition, and what do you think people need to look out for?
So a lot of the times we see in the shelter untreated mental illness. Likely a lot of situations they've been kicked out of their house with their parents, friends, roommate situations, because they're just acting strange or to them and they haven't thought about what's really going on. And we see those symptoms a lot and have to be the one to talk to someone about the way you're behaving is concerning, you know? So things like pressured speech, so not exactly what they're saying, but how their speech comes out can be a sign of them feeling differently. Their eyes are not tracking you or what they're seeing. They're maybe seeing or hearing things that aren't there. And I think there's so much judgment and people are scared of that. You know, if someone says, did you hear that? Or, you know, someone's after us, or paranoia of unrealistic things that aren't there. People are really scared to ask someone, you know, what that means for them and like, let's go get the help that sounds like you need. It's like, whoa, you know, they're seeing things that aren't there. And then that person is just left on their own to deal with that. And I think about if all of us were seeing things that weren't there, that would be extremely scary, you know, and I can't imagine feeling like you have to deal with that on your own.
Yeah, and because it's uncomfortable, people can become very isolated, and you know, our culture can create, I don't know, a narrative, myths about why people are homeless, or assumptions about why people are homeless. And could you list some of those common assumptions or myths that people may have?
Yeah, so a common myth that people have about individuals that are homeless are that all of them are criminals or all of them had committed a crime. That's false. Most often, people that are homeless have had crimes committed against them and don't feel comfortable going to the police because they're not believed. People that are homeless are stigmatized to tell lies to get attention or looking for some ulterior motive. So statistics show that roughly half have had a crime committed against them or committed a crime. But if you think about if you were on the street, how would you survive on the street or living in a shelter, sleeping next to someone that you don't know? You might survive by you know, feeling safe, doing any number of things that don't make sense to others, but that you never know what you would do if you're in that situation in order to keep yourself safe, right? Especially experiencing a mental illness, which others don't understand.
And let me ask a question of everyone here. How many, show of hands, and I'm not shaming anybody here, but how many people here who have volunteered or helped in any kind of homeless shelter or feeding program or anything like that? Good. Gotta raise your hands. Okay. Some of us have. If somebody did want to help a homeless person or someone living in a shelter, what's the best way to go about it?
Definitely volunteering your time and donating money if you can. But I think the most important is the simplest things like eye contact, shaking hands, and the meaningful connection. One of the #1 causes of addiction or mental illness and things like loneliness is a lack of human connection. So the eye contact between you and someone that is feeling like no one's there for them and they have no one, let's say they have no family, friends, maybe they've lost that because of their illness or their circumstance. You saying, hey, how are you doing today? Maybe you're the first person that's talked to them that day, and that's going to mean a lot to them. So I think more than donations and volunteering your time, if you can't do that, is reaching out to someone on the street that you see that's looking like they may be struggling and saying, you know, hey, how are you? I see you. You know, you're seen. That makes a huge difference. Especially what I hear from my clients is, oh my God, the nicest person just said hi to me. They're not talking about that they gave them money. They just said, you know, someone noticed me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had read not too long ago that we can't all be psychologists, but we can all be friendly.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good bit of advice. Can you tell us about any personal experiences you've had with mental illness and addiction? We're going to kind of turn a personal corner here, but.
So for a while, I've struggled with depression, and I went went through a lot of the same feelings that I think people do. I thought it was circumstantial. I'd just been married or newly married and having a baby, and I thought it was just sort of the stress of new parenthood and that, and then it just didn't stop. And having people say you need to get over it, or you need to move on, you need to be strong for your family, just digs it down deeper to that it's my fault, and it really begins to root in being my fault or something that I can get rid of on my own. So I think I really liked what you shared about you can be healthy in your mental illness. You can be mentally healthy in your mental illness, which is a huge piece for me because, you know, feeling like, well, when's it going to go away? When is it going to be finished? Or when am I going to conquer it? Conquering it, I think, for me is every day making the choice to be happy and healthy and doing the daily things that I do in my life to make that happen. Yeah, with addiction, I have, alcoholism and addiction in my family, and I think really recognizing that it can be hereditary, and it can be learned behaviors that you see around you that are important to be watchful for when you're starting a relationship with drugs or alcohol as a teen, and that's common to experiment with drugs and alcohol, to be really noticeable about how your body and your brain is reacting to these substances and how much you rely on them. And I came to definitely rely on alcohol to, enjoy a party, and that sort of became part of my identity, was the party girl, and I don't want that to be a part of my identity, but it's not that easy for me to just say, well, it's not working for me, so I'm going to stop it. So I have to figure out a way, which I have through, becoming a Christian and going to what's called AA meetings, to really finding out more about myself, why I drank in the first place, because it's not really about the substance you put in your body, it's about why you're choosing to be out of your mind and be not conscious for a moment. So that's an important part for me, is like finding out why we do the things we do.
Yeah. I mean, a huge part of this conference is about removing stigma. You mentioned that at the very beginning of our time together, and between what you do now, helping others, between that and, of course, your own experience, do you think this has contributed to helping you to overcome judgment and stigma that you previously had about homeless individuals, people with mental health concerns, or whatever?
Yeah, for sure, because I see people that come into my shelter that I never would have thought would have been homeless. I see 80-year-old women and men that never had kids and are experiencing untreated dementia or Alzheimer's. So they can't keep a house because they can't remember where they put their keys, and they just left their house and they don't know why. And then the lack of link between leaving the hospital and then the hospital trying to find a place for that person to go is usually us at the shelter. So that is, a client that I never would have thought would have been homeless, right? You just think they're just going to live in their cute little apartment until they, pass away, and it's really not the reality. People that are homeless are not always who they think they are. They're sometimes what's called hidden homeless, so it's people that are sleeping on a friend's couch or, temporarily at a friend's place, and those people need just as much help as the person on the street. So definitely working in this and going through my own experience has really helped me to reach out to anyone that says they're struggling, and not to take for granted that they feel secure enough to tell someone that, because that's all it takes is telling one person, and if one person doesn't listen, tell another person, because it's such an important part of getting rid of the stigma is just telling enough people that enough people know and listen and have it in their heads that it's a real concern.
Well, thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.